Welcome back to the StodCast, where we are going to learn about all things elementary school at Berkshire Elementary School. And our first guest to talk about all those elementary things is Assistant Principal Kate Parente. Kate, welcome back to the StodCast.
Thank you so much for having me back.
If you remember back in the summer, we did talk to Kate, and she got to introduce herself to the Berkshire world, even though she was a teacher here for 2 years anyway, through the StodCast as her experiences as a new assistant principal. So, Kate, talk to us about all the awesome things that are happening at the elementary school.
Well, my first 5 months in elementary school as the assistant principal have been going wonderfully. I'm learning from the best. Ms. Giel and I are running things together, and it's just been wonderful to have that dynamic and get to be able to learn from her and lead through her example. So it's been wonderful.
So how many months did you say?
I think I'm on month 5.
5 months.
Months.
That's
yeah.
A blur. It seems like just yesterday we were in here talking about what do they do in the summer.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
I can't believe it. We're almost halfway through the school year. Gosh.
So let's talk about a few of those really cool things that you guys do down at the elementary. What keeps those kids interested all day long?
Well, I have to give lots of credit to our PBIS team. We just received gold status for year 2 in a row.
So tell us, for all our listeners, what does PBIS stand for?
So that's our positive behavior and incentive supports. And that's basically catching our kids doing amazing things. We do that through using our Dojo app and website, which the parents should all be very familiar with. It's our way of communicating with folks at home about what's going on in the classroom. And our students can earn dojos for making great choices. We can also use that opportunity for Dojo to take Dojo points away if there are skills or events that need some redirection or re-education on. So with our students and that Dojo program, if they have received 90% or higher for the month, we do a special Get Out with Giel event. And that was very exciting to have last week. For our kiddos, we celebrated with watching some Christmas movies and handing out candy canes at the end of the day. So it was wonderful to support and celebrate those kiddos that are having such success with positive behavior in the beginning of the school year.
That is awesome. And you said gold. And to me,
status.
Gold means the best,
Gold
right?
is the best, absolutely.
So
and we
I'm gonna throw some numbers at you, and you tell me if these numbers are accurate.
Okay.
So first number, I believe, is pretty accurate. I believe there are, in the state of Ohio, 3,799 individual school buildings. Of those 3,799 individual school buildings, only 41 received a PBIS gold status, correct?
Gold status, absolutely. That's correct. We worked very hard to get that, and to get it 2 years in a row was pretty amazing, very special, and it's just a huge testament to our teachers and everybody that's really committed to catching our kiddos making those great choices and really celebrating their successes with it when it comes to positive behavior.
Let's test our math skills really quick. What would 41 of 3,799, what percentage would that be? Would you say we were in the top 3%?
I feel like it's got to be a single digit. It's got to be a single digit.
So Berkshire Elementary is one of 41
going for gold
out of 3,799. That's pretty impressive.
Yes,
That's something to be proud of for the elementary.
Sure is. Very excited to be a part of that and celebrate that, continue to do that on a monthly basis. We also have an incredibly active and wonderful PTO. They've been planning lots of fun activities. We had our book fair in November, and this month we're doing our snowflake shop, and that gives our kiddos an opportunity to go and do some Christmas holiday shopping for their families. They've got lots of opportunities for kids to purchase things that are anywhere from $1 to, I think the most expensive thing is maybe $4 or $5. So for just a couple dollars, the kiddos can go and purchase things for their family members, and they seem to really enjoy that. They get to, have that just adult sort of experience of getting to go shopping for their moms or their dads or their siblings or their grandparents.
So they get to make mom and dad feel good with a nice stocking stuffer and don't even have to leave school to get it.
Yes. Oh, and it's wonderful. It's just to see their faces and, oh, dad's going to love this back scratcher or my mom's going to love this candle. It's really cute to see how excited they are to surprise their families on Christmas.
What are the logistics like getting students through that process?
The PTO did a great job at having a sign-up sheet, so the classroom teachers can sign up for the times that would be most appropriate for them to take their kiddos down there. And we have a whole back hallway where most of our PTO things are stored, and they've just sort of set up maybe 7 or 8 tables full of things that the students can buy, and they could just go through and then do their shopping, and at the end of the tables they can make their purchases and then go home with some gifts that are already wrapped and ready to give for the holidays.
Awesome. So we have about 25 classrooms at the elementary, right? And they all coordinated. They went a classroom at a time?
Classroom at a time, yep. And thanks to our wonderful PTO, we have volunteers that are working to restock all of those items, to make sure that we have somebody working the cashier, and then also the ability to wrap some of those gifts as well. So it's pretty exciting to offer that just through the kindness and generosity of our parents that are willing to volunteer.
That is awesome.
Yes.
So, other than the PTO and our, you mentioned Get Out with Giel, and that's one of the rewards for PBIS. And you don't get PBIS Gold by just having a few things. So you've got a very comprehensive program there. Explain to us a little bit about what Get Out with Giel is.
So Get Out with Giel is at the very end of the beginning of the month, we tally up all of our students' behavior reports, and if anyone has that 90% or higher of positive dojo points, and that gives you some availability to, we're not looking for perfection. I think it's important that we acknowledge that our students, it's okay to learn from our mistakes. We make those mistakes as long as we can learn and grow through them. We're not expecting perfection, but if you can get a 90% or higher on those dojo points for the month, then you can go and have a special outing with Miss Giel, with our school principal. So it's pretty neat. And then we also have a lot of families that have donated some time or funds to support that. We had several boxes of candy canes that were donated, and that was our opportunity to provide each student that came out in December, celebrating the month of November, for our movie time and candy cane event. We've also done things in the past like cider and donuts. We also do some fun things, like we made a get to know your principal, and it was sort of like understanding, it was like a game show sort of thing, and the kids just really enjoyed. It doesn't always necessarily need to be about food, but sometimes we can celebrate with some candy at the end of the day and just really celebrate their positive choices.
So their Get Out with Giel is just a different activity, whether it be like maybe some extra recess or a movie or a game or a trivia, just some fun thing that they get to do with the principal, because you don't want kids to think going to the principal's office is always a bad thing.
No,
right?
Definitely not. Definitely not. We want them to know that we're here, and we're here to support them and celebrate all of their positive, their successes as well. And for those students that might not make that 90%, we use that sort of as a reflective opportunity to also just revisit our school expectations and get a chance to talk with them about what we can do differently this coming month to get them to that next Get Out with Giel. Maybe it's making sure that we're raising our hand when we want to say something in the class, or making sure we're keeping our hands to ourselves. Whatever reasons those students might have lost dojo points, it gives us an opportunity to visit with them on a one-to-one, smaller group setting, and just make sure that we are supporting their choices in the future and supporting them to come to the next one.
So when a child does have to come to the office for something that they, sometimes shouldn't be doing, or they need a little bit of redirection, There's a paper they fill out, a reflection they fill out. Can you tell us what that's called and what that process is?
It is. We call it Reflect, Reset, and Return to Learn. And I think it's important that we talk about our mistakes. The great Miss Heather Giel always says that mistakes are growth opportunities, and I love that, because when you make a mistake, you have two choices. You can continue to make that mistake, or you can learn and grow from that mistake. And one is going to get you right back in the same place where we are, when we made that mistake, and the other one gives us an opportunity to learn, grow, and move forward. So our opportunity to reflect, reset, and then return to learn supports that growth mindset. And we really want to make sure that those students are given the opportunity to talk through it. What could we have done differently? And just make sure that, we're going to go back to school. We're not going to let this little hiccup be a bump, nothing more than a bump in the road. We're going to get our train back on the tracks and continue to learn safely.
That's great. That's it gives them a goal.
Yes,
and,
for sure.
And then they can work toward the next get out with Giel for
that
the next
celebration.
Month after they
Absolutely.
come back.
Yes.
I'm sure that in addition to the PBIS activities, that there also are some fun assemblies that you do in the elementary school. Can you tell us about some of those?
So in the beginning of the year, we actually had a PBIS expectations assembly, and that was really neat. Bert the Badger came down, and he was our character in the assembly that was making maybe the poorer of the choices, and the students had to see Bert, Bert wasn't lining up his lunch tray the right way, or Bert was making a lot of mess when he was washing his hands at the restroom, so how could Bert do things a little differently? And we sort of used Bert as the teaching tool to review some of those school expectations, whether it's in the classroom, how we walk in the hallway, how we use the restroom quietly, even as far as lunchroom expectations, making sure that the kiddos are very familiar with what is expected of them, so that they can, go ahead and start the school year with those expectations. So we had a fantastic PBIS assembly to kick our year off, making sure that the students understood their expectations. We also had a Flags for First Graders event, which was really neat. We had a group of folks that were in the military come, and they talked a lot about what the Pledge of Allegiance was. They reviewed some of those words that we say every day, like what is an allegiance, what does that mean, and just sort of gave them an opportunity to learn some of the vocabulary that they say every single day when we stand to do our Pledge of Allegiance. They also gave all the kiddos a coloring book and a flag to take home. So that was a really special opportunity we had as an assembly. And then Halloween was a huge day in the elementary school. We had all of our teachers and staff, they all dressed up, and we had a fantastic celebration. We had our whole Halloween, we had all the kiddos down in the gym, and we had lots of fun games that we played. We were wrapping students up as mummies. We were having like a Hungry Hungry Hippo contest with hula hoops and some rollers in the gym. So it was lots of fun. Some donut eating on a string contests. So something just to have a great time putting the whole school together and
you want kids to have fun and associate this place with fun.
Absolutely.
And I love that your assemblies are about teaching them the proper way to behave before correcting their behavior, because it's really hard to correct it if they don't understand how to behave in the first place. So.
Right, I can't hold them accountable for something if I didn't first teach it. So we want to make sure that we're always addressing our expectations so that we can have something to sort of, circle back to, hey, remember when we had that assembly? Or what does being your best really mean in the lunchroom or in the classroom or in the hallway? So I think it's important that we set those expectations, make them very clear, and then we can, just get ahead of, like you said, get ahead of it and be more proactive.
Now, I also see occasionally different themes for different weeks in the elementary school wing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we have a very exciting Spirit Week coming up next week. Monday we'll be wearing white and sparkles for Frosty the Snowman. Tuesday we'll all be wearing green for the Grinch. Wednesday is wearing red for Rudolph. Thursday is going to be our PJ Day for the Polar Express, and then Friday is our Holiday Spirit Day. For the last 3 Fridays of the year, we've been having an ugly sweater contest with the staff, and we've gotten some incredibly creative sweaters that some staff are making, and I look forward to seeing what sweaters we see on this Friday and the following.
So obviously that Spirit Week is all holiday related. Have you done other Spirit Weeks throughout the year for kids to get excited about dressing special during the week?
Yes, and we have another Spirit Week coming up in the new year. It will be our Secret Spirit Week, where the kids will have to sort of figure out what the teachers are doing, and that's always really fun and exciting for them to pick up on. Why are all the teachers drinking out of things that are not cups, for instance? It's always neat.
So is there a contest where there's a winner of who can guess the correct thing?
I think we're going to have to do something like that. Absolutely. Yeah. See who can get it first.
Anything you can do to make it more fun.
Absolutely. You got to have some fun.
All right, Mrs. Parente, this has been a great StodCast. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the elementary and exciting things, or what you may be excited for the rest of the year, or what's made your year fly by?
Yeah, I would love to plug the PTO is doing a wonderful hoedown showdown on January 31st from 6 to 10 over at the Bond Building, and they've been working really hard to get that put together. It's going to be an adult-only country western theme evening. They're going to have food and beverages available, and they're also going to be having lots of fun things raffled off, everything from you can win a pizza party for your student and their class, all the way to being principal or assistant principal for the day. So we're going to have lots of opportunities and fun things that they'll be raffling off. And again, that's going to be January 31st from 6 to 10, and I'm sure they're going to be putting lots more information out on Facebook and Dojo about that. So
sounds like a lot of fun line dancing opportunities.
Line dancing, I think they're going to have axe throwing and some photo shoots. So yeah, a lot of fun times.
Sounds a little dangerous. All right.
So
thank you, Mrs. Parente. It was great to have you here on the StodCast.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
All right. And welcome back to the StodCast and our All About the Elementary School edition. And we're going to talk a little bit about early literacy next. And I just so happen to have our early literacy specialist, Miss Sonia Morris. And I want to let Mrs. Morris introduce herself to us and tell us a little bit about herself, and then we'll get into some literacy questions.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So like you said, I'm the early literacy specialist here. I've actually been teaching for now, this is my 25th year of teaching. I'm that old. But for the last, I'd say 15 years, I've had my master's in reading. And then for the past decade, I've really had a lot more coursework that I've done that has led me to understand more about how students learn to read and what things we can put in place to kind of help them with that. I taught at Newberry for several years before coming here. I was the literacy specialist there as well, and did some work with Ohio State University. And now I am here for the last 5 or 6 years, I think. And I've been doing literacy work here ever since COVID. I actually got the opportunity to teach in a classroom one year, which was very exciting. Since then, I've been doing the literacy specialist role, and I work with select groups of students that have specific needs. And in addition to that, I work with teachers on basically learning more about reading and our language and how to teach reading to students.
So you're the coach of all the reading.
Yeah, I'm that.
So in generalities, talk to our podcast viewers, our StodCast viewers, about what early literacy is and why it's important.
Right. So early literacy has probably changed a lot since some of our viewers have been in school and how they learned. It's interesting because the foundational skills are so important to help students as they get to those higher levels to be able to read text that's more rigorous and understand it and then be able to analyze it. And that's our ultimate goal. But so much has changed. That's one of the things that I have a lot of discussions with parents about is, well, how do I help my kids? And then when we're talking about the things to do, they're like, oh, that's very different. And it's because it's different from when they were taught to read. It's even different from when I started teaching reading. So within the course of my career, there have been a lot of changes, and most of that is revolved around the science of reading. We've had science of reading training here. It's now mandated by the state that we all learn about what happens in the brain as we process our language to be able to read and write and speak and listen. When we're talking about reading, there's different parts. There's when you speak and listen, our brain is actually hardwired to do that. That's oral language. It's the oral language component of reading. That we all have the capacity to do that. Children, just like in any other subject area, they develop at different paces. But that part is something that we focus on a lot more in early literacy. And it's a little bit different because we're saying we're thinking about the sounds that are within words and the sounds that are represented then by letters, where before we started off with like letter names. You need to know your ABCs when you come to school. It's a little bit different. Now you're better off knowing what the sounds are that are in words. And that's kind of one of the things that they focus on. Even within our curriculum, we don't even start talking about letters until halfway through the kindergarten year. We focus on the sounds that are in words because those individual sounds come together to make words, the words come together to make sentences, and they build on each other. Now, that is all the part of our brain that the students already have working for them. They come to us with oral reading skills or oral listening skills. But when we attach a symbol to it, like when we say this is what an A looks like, and it's the letter A, now we have where we're getting into the reading and writing portion. And our brain is not hardwired to do that. It's actually part of our brain is repurposed to be able to do that. So that's the part that we really have to explicitly teach and facilitate here in school, and we do that from the very beginning. So I think that's one of the things when I talk to parents, especially when they're starting off, and since we've changed curriculum to Amplify and CKLA, we even have parents who have kids who were in the district before CKLA and then after CKLA, and they can see and notice the difference with just presenting the phonemic component of it or the sound component of it, how much faster their students are able to read and the length of what they can read.
So you said the science of reading, and it sounds like there's a lot of science going on in this reading. And I'm sure that, when I was younger, and you're close to my age, and I'm sure some of our listeners are, we heard a lot, Hooked on Phonics worked for me, right?
Right.
You probably still remember the commercials.
Right.
Hooked on Phonics worked for me.
Yeah, I mean...
Do we still focus on phonics?
We absolutely do focus on phonics. It's a huge part of it. That's part of the reading skill. Once you get out of phonemic awareness, which is the sounds, the phonics part is where we attach the visual representation of those letters. We look at the letter A, we know that it says A or that it says A. That's the phonics piece. That is what happens in early literacy. So we start out with the sound portion, we go into the phonics portion where we're attaching those sounds to letters and then building words. Amplify has a very strong phonemic awareness and phonics program. We also support it with Haggerty for phonemic awareness, and all of those concepts essentially are taught in K through 2. It's really interesting because within the science of reading, what it does is it breaks down our language into like the teeny tiniest little parts and then builds it back up. Not only for us as learners, as adults, it's really interesting to see and learn about, but also for our students. They're capable of doing the same thing. So it's just a slightly like these little tweaks that we've made to the way that we teach that are setting students up to be more efficient because we're using that knowledge of how it processes in their brain to process more efficiently and accurately.
So when I was younger, we had to memorize sight words and a lot of vocab. Do we still do that?
So it's very different than it was before. A sight word, when we learned sight words when we were younger, it was really referring to high frequency words. And those are the words that are used most in our language, especially in writing. The actual meaning of the word sight word is any word that you look and read by sight. So your sight word knowledge is different than my sight word knowledge is different than a kindergartner's sight word knowledge. So it's all about getting kids to that point where they look at a word and they see it for what it is, and then we attach the meaning to it and understand it. So that's kind of a thing that's a little bit different or has changed. We do teach sight words, but we actually teach, they're called tricky words in the Amplify curriculum. And what it's essentially saying is they're either high frequency words that are used a lot. They're the words that are used the most in the language. So we want to get them down and we want to get them to the point where we're efficient and accurate. The other piece to them is we still want to look at that as if it was phonetic. We want to look at it and look for the parts of it that follow the rules of our language. Mm-hmm. So whatever word it is, like the word have, for instance, the H still says, the V still says V. It's the A consonant silent E, that's the tricky part, essentially. So we identify those tricky parts for students so they look at them, but the most efficient strategy for us to use is honestly looking at the words, reading them from left to right, and still utilizing our phonics knowledge as much as we can. But there are pieces of our language that we know don't fit into that.
Sure.
So we have to prepare students for that as well.
Everybody's seen Gallagher, right? A-C-H-E, ache. M-U-S-T-A-C-H-E, mistake?
Right,
No,
right,
mustache.
right.
It's a very difficult language to learn.
It is. And I think, too, that's another thing that keeps coming up and that I've, in my study of our language, you get a lot of people and even teachers and other adults, they're like, well, this language is really difficult because it's not phonetic like Finnish or Russian or whatever. But it still is highly based on phonics. Mm-hmm. There's the certain percentage of what's based on phonics is still there. It's just, I think there was a different kind of culture around it when we were younger that said this is tricky for some people and something that they maybe can't figure out, but that's not necessarily true. That's not the way that we perceive it now, knowing what we know.
So when you start your foundation, phonemic awareness, that there are sounds, then phonics, specific letters make certain sounds. Then what's the next step?
So it's interesting because it's kind of like a continuum. So that is the portion of decoding, which is looking at a word and being able to read it on the paper. But then there are other components like the oral comprehension or listening comprehension components, and that's where you see the things like vocabulary. You said kind of memorizing vocabulary when we were younger. We would look at a word, we'd define the word, we would memorize the
10
definition.
spelling words every week.
Correct. You'd write it so many times. The idea behind expanding vocabulary, that's another idea under the science of reading that's changed for us. One of the things is that we have taken on a curriculum that kind of pushes a lot of bigger ideas down in the grade levels to give kids access to this kind of language and information. A lot of the units, when in Amplify, they have skills units, which is for the decoding piece, and then they have knowledge units, which is for that listening comprehension piece. So that's working on students' ability to understand the meaning of the text and analyze the text and get to some of those higher level thinking things. So at a younger age, you can do that by listening, even if you can't read that level of words that you're getting. But our goal is building background knowledge and vocabulary so that when the students get to these rigorous texts later on, it's not the first time they've seen it. It's not the first time that they've had access to it. And I think that's something that we teach more explicitly in school now because you can't always rely on students having this same background knowledge. Everybody comes to us from a different place and different experiences. So it's our responsibility to teach them that in school so that we're giving those similar experiences to people for an equity
And a little bit of productive struggle is okay.
It is, absolutely.
You want to teach that stick-to-itiveness and that grit, and the more you try and the more you practice, the better you get.
Right. And they've done a really good job, especially when I think about how they're doing CKLA units, coming off of project-based learning. They've done a good job of melding those two together. All of the units that we have in the knowledge portion could lend themselves to bigger projects where they utilize and apply the information that they've learned. I know in first grade, I saw they were doing a unit on the body, and it's all the different systems within the body. And then they took that and used that to create skeletons of themselves and present them. But they're taking it to a deeper level, and it goes beyond what you would expect a first grader to learn. And I think that's some of the things that some parents are surprised by as well. They come home and they're like, why do they have to know this kind of vocabulary, like metatarsals and things like that? You're in first grade. But it's not that you have to know it, be able to spell it, be able to use it. It's that you're getting the experience with it. You're hearing it because that's your strength with reading is the listening comprehension piece. You're hearing it enough times, you're seeing it enough times, so that by the time you do need to read that in some kind of text and understand it, you know what they're talking about.
And hearing that's important, which is why we've always been told and kind of tried to guide our parents to read aloud for 20 minutes a night to your child, just so they get exposure to those different sounds and
right.
words.
It's absolutely true. Even with, they get exposure to the different sounds, but they get exposure to an enormous amount of language. And even with picture books, a lot of times parents will look at picture books and think, well, this is just like a little kid reading. The language used in some of those picture books is extremely advanced. And that's why the parents need to take on that role of decoding it for the students. But then you talk about the meaning and the vocabulary involved with it, and that's how the students grow. So sometimes I think it's a little bit different where you used to sit down and the kid was expected to read that. No, this is like a shared experience. You're still working on reading, you're working on the comprehension piece of it with your student.
Awesome. So we have certain state mandates.
Yes.
So can you tell us how kind of all your early literacy work helps with things like, first of all, talk to our listeners about what the third grade reading guarantee is, and then what are we doing to make sure that we meet the third grade reading guarantee?
Yes, absolutely. So the third grade reading guarantee is mandated by the state of Ohio, and what it essentially says is that students are going to be proficient readers by the time they leave third grade. The way that they measure this proficiency is through the Ohio State test, which is an outcome assessment. The third graders take it for the first time in the fall of third grade. They also take it again in the spring of third grade. After that, students will take that Ohio State test. In ELA is what I'm speaking of. There are other Ohio State tests.
But that's their first introduction to Ohio State testing.
That is the first time that they've taken the test on that platform. And that, I think, is one of the challenges that we have, is that students aren't necessarily prepared to utilize that platform and the way that it is set up. And there are things that we're doing this year. I just was in a meeting with third grade today. But there are things that we're doing this year to kind of help prepare students better and also get that information to parents so that they can help with it at home. But if they do not pass the third grade reading guarantee, then there are supports that we put in place to get them to the point where they can. And that's kind of something that has changed. And a lot of the issues that I hear from parents, especially parents with older students, is it wasn't that way when their older student went through third grade. And that did change, especially during COVID. We've had the third grade reading guarantee for quite a long time. During COVID, they had a lot of exemptions to the rules. So we didn't have to follow the retention policy. Even since COVID, they continued giving those exemptions. There were other tests that the students could take that could show their proficiency, as opposed to just the Ohio State test. Last year was the first year that all of those exemptions are gone. You have to get the proficient score. We also had a point in time where you could get a slightly lower score and it was building up. That exemption is gone, or exception is gone. And so the students are expected to get, it's a 700 proficiency score. They do have a reading sub-score of 50, but if they don't get the 700 proficiency, then they have to continue on with supports, or we have to think about ways that we can support them more to be able to get them to the point where they're reading proficiently. And we have a lot of things going on here that help with that.
Sure, and a lot of politicians talk about not wanting to pass kids on to fourth grade until they can meet the third grade reading guarantee. I'm sure that they didn't just pick third grade out of the air. What research is there behind the fact that third grade is the grade?
When I talked about it, it actually revolves around, they have the reading rope is one of the theories that they utilize to talk about how reading develops. And it's where the decoding piece, where you're looking and just reading what the word says, and then the listening comprehension piece where you have the vocabulary, the meaning of it, the comprehension of it. It's those pieces are taught separately, and they exist separately kind of until third grade. Mm-hmm. They come together, and that reading rope then like meshes together. And that's where you're supposed to have enough knowledge of decoding to be able to read the words on the page. And the reason for us needing to be fluent readers, which fluency means you're reading quickly and accurately. So there's more, well, there's also a component about expression, but all of those things lend itself to comprehension. If you can read the words on the page quickly and accurately, and we're talking a pretty fast pace, like if we even tested ourselves on that fluency, we might get lower scores than what we thought, because, but there's reading out loud, and then there's also reading that you're doing in your head. So I guess the point about that is the reason that we need that to happen is because it frees up part of your brain. Then you don't have to think about what this word says. You can now think about the comprehension. What's the meaning of this passage? And that all comes together at third grade.
So that's the concept that we hear people talking about all the time, where they say you start learning to read and then you start reading to learn.
Mm-hmm. It's because
which is not a new concept, right?
Right.
We've been saying that for 20 years.
Right. It is a little bit different though too, in the sense that there's still that kind of mentality operates on the fact that once you get to third grade, if you can decode that, you know what it means. Mm-hmm. And there's still a piece of that that's missing. We still have to work on the vocabulary and the comprehension piece, because students need a solid background knowledge on what that is in order to really understand the text. Even that is different from when we used to teach. I mean, I remember teaching several years ago, and building background knowledge meant you did a KWL chart at the beginning, what you already know and what you want to learn, and then what you did learn. And that is a portion of it, but that is not a robust background knowledge of the topic, so that when you read those words, you can understand what they mean and understand what they mean in that context.
So when we hear people talk about the third grade reading guarantee, and those who want an absolute, you're either proficient or you don't move on, there is a little bit of nuance to that, because not everyone picks that up the same way, and there's nothing magic about third grade, although there is a body of research that would say fourth grade is around the time where you start needing to read to learn more. But there is, like you said, a kind of a continuum, and that's why there will be some students who may not score that 700 or that proficient, and then we could probably argue over whether that is the real measure of whether they really have mastered reading. But there still are some ways we can, those children can move on and still get some supports, and then still develop on that continuum and be ready to
Absolutely.
read to learn.
Yes. So I think one of the other components of research that we should maybe talk a little bit about is the reasoning behind that is early intervention in literacy can lead to big gains.
Sure.
When you get students who have reading deficiencies at an older age, it just takes more time and it's harder to process, but it's absolutely doable. It just takes a little bit more time. The habits have been built, the harder it is to break those habits. Yeah, so one of the things that I'm most proud of with Berkshire is that we do have a lot of supports in place for all of our readers. So if a student comes into school, we have to do a diagnostic at the beginning of the year, and it's a reading diagnostic, but essentially it's a screener. And it allows us to find out what the students are capable of doing, and then what their strengths and weaknesses are. We have a system in place that takes that information, and then we can create targeted lessons that go along with that to help support students. We do that. That is something that is guaranteed in a reading improvement and monitoring plan, which is a RIMP, another word for a RIMP. That is all part of the mandate from the state for the third grade reading guarantee. But we also have the capacity now to provide that for students who don't have a RIMP, but maybe they're giving us inconsistent data, and we want to make sure that they have like that solid foundation. So we have a structure in place that allows us to do that using our Amplify curriculum. The one that we're using for this is M-Class. It's an assessment piece. It provides us with a lot of data. The tests that are administered one-to-one by a trained professional. All of our teachers are trained. We have specialists that are trained. And then it takes that information and it allows us to group students together and they go into small groups for tutoring sessions that happen during our strategies time, and then we progress monitor them. So every 2 weeks, we're also looking at, when we're teaching these things explicitly in a small group, then every 2 weeks we measure how the students are progressing. If they're not progressing, then it allows us to move them into different groups, or it changes what we're teaching as far as the lessons go. It really has given the teachers a lot of power in understanding what their students need and how to move forward with that in a more efficient way. So it allows us to provide those services for a lot more students than we were able to in the past.
Awesome. Now, you talked about Amplify a few times, and those are the curricular materials that we use, and you led the team that selected those curricular materials. Can you talk to us about that process and why those were selected?
So the state of Ohio has mandated that you have highly qualified instructional materials. They've approved a list of reading programs that public schools are allowed to use throughout the state. Before they passed that legislation, we knew it was coming. So the year before that, we started a team that included teachers that represented all of our K through 12, our special ed department, some other specialists. We also brought in administration, and then in addition to that, we had some support from the ESC. So together, we looked at different programs, and we thought about how they would fit into our culture here at Berkshire, and then how they would support us in growing our readers and getting them to the point that they were reading proficiently. We ended up, we did that process over the course of an entire year and spent a lot of time looking closely and then taking that information back to our staff and the community and seeing what their opinion was, and ended up making the decision of Amplify, which is a reading program it's the platform that we use that houses CKLA, which is core knowledge, language arts, and that is our K through 5 reading curriculum, and every student gets that curriculum. In 6 through 8, Amplify's curriculum is called ELA. We also utilize their Boost program, which is a personalized learning platform that can support all of our students. It also lends us to a connection at home where students can work on Boost while they're at home. We have students who work on it here during the day and at home, but it has specific learning targets for each student, and then gives us feedback and information so that we as the professionals can go in and give them help if they need to. In addition to that, we use M-Class, which is the assessment piece, and M-Class, which is also our intervention piece. So we've adopted the majority of their platform, and we're in year 3 of implementation, and anybody who has done an implementation knows that it's a process. The teachers are learning. They've spent a lot of time learning not only about reading and how the brain develops through dyslexia training, the science of reading training, but they've also learned about Amplify's platform and how that is supported by the science of reading. So every year we continue to take on new initiatives to get to the point where we're more familiar with the programs and what the capabilities are so that they can best serve our students.
Awesome. Well, Sonia, it has been great catching up with you and learning all that we've learned about early literacy. Thank you so much for having me. So hopefully the listeners enjoyed it and the viewers enjoyed it as much as I did. And thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, welcome back to the StodCast and our All About the Elementary edition. And now we have elementary school principal, Miss Heather Giel. Heather, welcome to the StodCast.
Hi, Dr. Stoddard. Thanks again for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Anytime. I'm sure that all of the elementary school knows who Mrs. Giel is, and then the rest of our viewers from the summer, from the what do we do in the summer here, know who Mrs. Giel is. So we've been talking a lot about some of the fun things that happen and a lot about early literacy.
Sure.
So I want to just dive right in with you, Mrs. Giel, about what kinds of things are we doing to meet the individual needs of our students at the elementary school?
Sure. So I'm so glad to hear, and you're having us on talking about early literacy. It's definitely become a passion of mine, and all of the growth that we are, or things that we're doing to implement the growth for all of our students. We can dive in and let's talk about the different things that we offer as far as like our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3.
Explain to the listeners what that means. So like what is Tier 1
So
mean?
Tier 1 is like any instruction. So that's something that all of our students would get. They have access to all of that. And then we kind of, as we identify the students who need more, right? And we need to offer them more resources. They would kind of navigate up. So they would become Tier 2, which is a more intense intervention, and then Tier 3 would be the most intense intervention that we can offer. And that goes for anything. That's academic, that's behavior. So, that all kind of is facilitated with the help of our MTSS team. And MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. And we have an amazing team of educators that come together. They meet with teachers, and we collaborate and brainstorm what it is our kids need.
So if we thought about it in terms of a pyramid,
Sure.
the base of that pyramid is Tier 1. Every student gets that.
Yeah.
And for a majority of the students, that's exactly what they need, but
Yeah.
there are some that need a little bit more, so that's Tier 2.
Sure.
And that's in the middle, and those students get a little more intense, and that will help almost the rest of those kids. But then there's that top of the pyramid where you've got those kids who just need a little bit more, and then that would be Tier 3.
Exactly. And we can fluctuate. I think, sometimes our kids really need something and they could, they would be identified, it would be identified as a Tier 3 support, but then eventually that could fall off. And maybe it's, they would drop down to a Tier 2 depending on their educational journey and kind of how everything evolves with them.
It could be some come ready for concepts and others don't.
Exactly.
So maybe this concept, they need some Tier 2, and this
Sure.
concept, they don't. So.
Absolutely. And we can fluctuate that down at the elementary school, which has been, it's been really amazing to have. In regards to literacy and Tier 1 supports, we have our Amplify ELA curriculum. So all of our students are participating in that curriculum. That CKLA structure is really providing a solid foundation for all of our students as they navigate through the elementary school and then into...
One thing really quick,
Yeah.
because Mrs. Morris referenced this, and I think
Yeah.
she explained it one time, but when you say CKLA, stands for Core Knowledge Language Arts.
Correct.
Got it.
You got it.
For the listener.
Way to go. I'm glad you're paying attention to Mrs. Morris. She's the brains behind all of this. So we have that Amplify, curriculum that all of our students are doing, right? And then what we've done, and I mentioned it over the summer, is that when we added that extra half hour, we were very intentional about how we were going to spend that time. So we developed a strategies class, and that is for all students, okay? So all of our students participate in strategies, no matter where you're at. For some of our families, they would know it as what I need now, okay? And we are going to close those gaps for those young learners. Strategies is different for every grade level, and we pour those resources into those students. So for example, we're going to take the third grade. All of our third grade teachers participate in strategies time, and the students participate in a beginning of the year benchmark, and that benchmark is going to kind of place them, and we're going to see where they're at. If our students are in the red, which would be, they really need some assistance, or maybe they're just off a little bit, we put them into what we would call a strategies group, and they are going to get intense interventions with a teacher. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that our teachers are not just focused on those 25 kids in their classroom. We are thinking, the whole class. So everybody is really intentional about thinking of all the kids in third grade. And those students, there's a couple things that this strategies class does, is not only are our students getting intense interventions with and targeted, okay, specifically for what they need in Amplify or ELA, I should say, using that M class, which is a piece of Amplify. is they could also be paired up with other teachers. So it could be, I could be assigned to Miss Lombardo's homeroom, but it could be somebody else that's teaching my strategies class. So during that time, I would go over to Miss McCartney's room, or I would go see Mrs. Morris, or I would be paired up with an intervention specialist, whoever's teaching, that concept of what I need. And I would work with them 5 days a week for a half hour every single day. And so not only are they building their circle of support, is what we would like to call it, but they're also working on those interventions. Now, if I'm a student that doesn't need those interventions, then I possibly am doing something else during that time where I can get on Boost, which is a personalized learning software that we have, and that kind of goes with the students. So, they're able to build on that. For some of them, because this strategies class has worked out so well and we've been able to close some of those gaps, we're able to offer some enrichment too. So specifically, we have a couple grade levels that are have targeted groups that are working on enrichment for our gifted students, which is awesome.
So strategies would be like a tier 2.
Sure.
For those students who didn't quite get it in tier 1, and for those students who did, they still go to strategies, but they dive deeper into some things, or do some what we would in the past we would have called that gifted and talented education. Sure. Or gifted services.
You could, I would say strategies is tier 1. Everybody's in strategies class or has that time, but depending on what they do would depend on what tier they're in. So if we're in M class, we're participating with that with a teacher, then we're getting those tier 2 supports.
So students who are in tier 2 are getting specific tier 2, but if they're in tier 3, they may be getting even more intense services than that. Okay.
Yeah.
So what types of tier 3 things do we have for our students?
So M class is considered tier 3, okay, as well. And there's other things that we've been able to do. When I talk about that MTSS team, there's other interventions that we can, we are, I'm going to say we're truly blessed to have one intervention specialist per grade level, which is almost unheard of, but you have been so supportive in that and making sure that our kids have a solid foundation. And we're able to utilize them and maximize their time. So sometimes they're pairing up in other small group interventions with those intervention specialists to close those learning gaps.
Awesome. Yeah. So we run a little bit different model than a lot of schools, and we do that specifically because we know each kid has a little bit different need, and no one fits perfectly in any type of a box, and we want all of our round pegs and our square pegs to all learn and grow the same.
Exactly. And so that's been really good. It's been a transition, anytime you dive into a brand new curriculum and we go to, and we're going to evolve our students and we're going to challenge them in a different way. Or I'm sure Mrs. Morris, she talked about that brain and how we're learning different, right? They're learning in a way that we didn't learn how to actually, read. And I think when you do that, you naturally create these gaps. So what we're doing is we are pouring in all the resources we have to close these gaps that we see. And it's a process, but you know what? We have everybody buying into that process, and we're seeing those small victories, and we're going to see those big victories, soon.
Yeah. And like you said, your elementary school teachers aren't just invested in the 25 students in their homeroom. They're really invested in every student in the grade level, which means we own all of the students. Like, we take accountability and ownership for how everyone's learning.
Exactly. And it's grown even more. That was, it's getting everybody to think outside that box, right? And even more so, we're starting that vertical alignment this year. So for, last year we introduced strategies. We're starting to do that. Now we're looking at that vertical alignment and that accountability piece and how we can support each other, with the different grade bands.
And what I've noticed is each year that we've gotten better at that, the confidence of the grade level above grows, because now they're seeing, I teach third graders, and the second graders coming to me now that their skills are expanding, so I can do other things and expand as well, as opposed to I don't have to reteach a bunch of things because I'm confident in what they were getting when they came up.
Exactly. This second grade class now, the class of 2036, was the first year that we started the Amplified curriculum. So they have that solid foundation, kindergarten, first grade, now second grade. And then the year, it would be these first graders, so 2037, they started kindergarten with that, not only that Amplified curriculum, but also participating actively in strategies class. So those are the classes to really watch and see kind of how it evolves over the course, if you want to talk about, the 5 years that they spend in elementary, and looking at that data and kind of tracking that, because that's going to be the whole picture of what we see.
Yeah, so with when you implement any new curricular materials, you create gaps in learning because they go in different sequences. So within the next couple of years, we will have a really tight control over if a child comes to us in kindergarten, by the time they get through third grade, they're pretty well going to be at grade level or very close to grade level reading. And our ultimate goal is everyone's reading at grade level by the end of third grade. And now we have those diagnostics every year to help, guide us in that direction.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we talked, Mrs. Morris talked to us about why it's important to be reading on grade level by the end of third grade.
Sure.
And so that's the goal.
Yeah, that's it. And we're working hard every day. And I mean, kudos to our teachers for the excitement that they bring to the classroom, and their dedication, I should say, and their positive attitude for it. But also to our kids, I mean, they have truly taken those challenges and they are running with it. And so it's really good to see. And when you see them, if you ever get an opportunity to come in and observe a strategies class and you see those small victories that they have, it's pretty cool. It's pretty inspiring to see them. And really those strategies classes, the awesome part is when you see that group of 6 students and they're understanding and they're getting it, and then when they go into the classroom, it's that confidence that they have. And when you see that shared confidence, with that whole class, that really says something about who we are.
And it builds the resilience.
Exactly.
And that's what we need. We need kids that are resilient.
That's
they
right.
can bounce back from setbacks, because life's going to throw them a lot of setbacks. It's never going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
And they got to know how to handle that.
That's right.
So we talked a lot about early literacy, and we talked a lot about English language arts and reading. Tell us a few of the other things from your perspective that make Berkshire Elementary School great.
Oh gosh, besides our students and our staff, I would say that it's I don't know. That's
what brings life to the elementary school wing?
What brings life? Probably just the positivity and the attitude that I think we have. I think that there's been a mind shift since I've started, and there's this expectation, and I think it's a shared expectation and a shared vision and mission of where we want to go. And when you see that and you support one another in that, then you develop that environment that is a positive learning environment that our staff wants to come to work. Our students want to come to school. Our discipline has gone down, over the years, and you're always going to have your hiccups, right? And our kids, I think I shared with you earlier, mistakes are growth opportunities. We're going to make mistakes. We got to teach them to learn and grow, and this is the environment we want them to make those mistakes, right? So they can grow and learn from them, and they're not making them out in the real world. But when you can provide that environment for our students and they're finding that success, then they want to be a part of that. And so that's really special. I know that we just received gold the second year in a row with our positive behavior intervention strategies, our PBIS, and our MTSS team is developing, and we're really strengthening those components of the elementary school.
We talked a little bit about how hard it is to get gold and how few schools in the state actually do receive even one time, let alone 2 times in a row. And I will tell you, anytime we have visitors come in and they visit the elementary, they always talk about how positive it is.
Yeah, thank you.
No matter who they talk to, no matter where they go, it's always positive. And no wonder we are gold in positive behavior
well, thank you.
and intervention support.
That's a huge compliment. That thank you. I so appreciate that, and I think I think that goes back to who our staff is, and that we are it because of them, which is awesome, and our students. So Yeah, it's a shared effort.
Just like the Lego movie, everything is awesome.
That's it.
Everything is
You
awesome.
got your counter going this time?
The counter is worn out. by
Oh,
now.
boy.
And just how many? What is this? Episode 6? I think the counter is worn out.
The counter's worn out.
You know, they don't have enough bells to ring anymore.
Got it. Well, I would say it's that collective efficacy that we have down there at the elementary, and that's what makes us so great.
Well, again, awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
So thank you for joining us, Mrs.
Absolutely.
Giel. It was great to have you. And
Thanks for
to
having
all
me.
of our listeners, thank you for watching the StodCast. Remember to like and subscribe. We want to get those views up, and we want all of you to be notified when we have new content available. And remember to stay curious, stay connected, and go Badgers.